Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Ken Jaques is a healthcare advocate. His own experiences with an autoimmune disease sent him on a quest to learn about health. In this podcast, Ken shares some of his thoughts and observations. Ken, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, give our listeners a little bit of background on you.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Pat. It's a pleasure to join you. In 2008, I was just your average Joe. I was every guy. Living life, woke up one morning and I had something in my feet and I couldn't walk to the washroom. I had pain in both feet. And fast forward to going to the doctor, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And when I was first diagnosed, it was funny because it would be in both feet for a few days, and then that would be gone. It would be in both elbows for a few days. That'd be gone. It'd be in both shoulders. And that kind of started my journey, actually, of getting to know myself and who I was a little bit better. I've certainly learned a lot on this path.
Talk a little bit about what's involved with rheumatoid arthritis, because I don't think everybody realizes how serious it is.
Right. And it's funny, Pat, it varies very much by person. There certainly are concepts of mild conditions, medium conditions, very severe conditions. Arthritis, arthro is of the joints, and itis is inflammation. There are many types. Rheumatoid arthritis, essentially, this is a patient talking, essentially it's in the blood and it moves around. In my current state, I tend to get it in my right foot more than anything. And in the mornings, I can't really walk very well, more because my foot isn't working. And as I get some blood flow going, I'm able to function just quite normally. Some people get it much worse and they have very deformed fingers and toes, and we get bumps on our elbows and things like that. So I'm probably a wee bit on the milder end, but I have had it since 2008.
How has it changed your life?
It's funny, when I was first diagnosed, the first thought was go to the doctor, get diagnosed, figure out what the treatment was and how could I live my life as normal as possible. And as I've gone on, I've been exposed to different aspects of the healthcare system, some that are within the conventional system, some that are outside the conventional system. And so I do a lot of exploring. I think a lot of patients do a lot of exploring. And I think I've figured out that there's an awful lot of things that we don't know and things that we don't understand regarding our health. And we're not educated on them. Not all doctors are educated on them the same way because they will tend to be specialists after a while. And the experience I've had working with other patients and working with doctors and understanding where all of our experiences are taking us and where our limitations sometimes slow us down. But I've really learned a lot on that, and I'd love to share some of that with you.
Yeah, I'm also a believer in looking at more integrative approaches to things. I'd be curious to know what you pursued and what you found.
So my very first experience was with a naturopath. I think I'll step back one sec. When I walked into my doctor, he said, "You've got to see a rheumatologist." I walked into my rheumatologist. My rheumatologist says, "You've got to do blood work." The blood work came back and said, "You have rheumatoid arthritis. Here is the cocktail of drugs that you will be on for the rest of your life." I looked her in the eye and I says, "Does diet have anything to do with this?" And she paused for a very brief second and she said, "No." And so that's what I thought the rest of my life was going to look like. Then I first experienced some time with a naturopath, and we spent an awful lot of time focused on what are all of the aspects that tie into our physical conditions. Is it stress? Is it what we're eating? Is it what's eating us? I had good experiences with the naturopath. I had good experiences with an acupuncturist who was more of a pain management at the time. And I just want to stress with any of this, anybody that's listening, none of this has anything to do with discrediting the conventional medicine system. The conventional medicine system does a lot of things. It tends to be a little bit of a diagnose and treat. And patients are looking for a bit more. And when they look outside and find some of the other possibilities like I have, then they find that there is a lot more out there. But it's not a fight. There's no integrative versus conventional. There's no everything works perfectly for everybody. And that's probably been my biggest lesson of all, because things that have helped me at times haven't helped me at others. Things that have helped others haven't helped me, and things that have helped me haven't helped others.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a fight. I think the difficulty is, as a patient, exploring things that are outside the traditional medical field and trying to figure out how to combine them for what works best for you at a moment. And the burden to do that is totally on the patient.
Exactly. And we're not taught that. We're not taught that from a young age. We're not taught the impacts that stress can have on the body. We're taught that stress is not a good thing. We're not taught the impacts that a really standard American diet or a terrible diet can have on the body. We know it's not a good thing, and we're told that we should eat better, but we're not really educated on what does that mean and how does that apply to me as I try to figure out what's going on in my personal situation.
No, I think the standard American diet is a nightmare. I know I shop mostly at places that have fresh, vegetables and fruits and things. So I don't always go into a supermarket, but whenever I go into one, I am stunned at all these products, in the center aisles that are not real. I mean, that I personally would not buy. It just amazes me that that is the bulk of the products they sell.
And how many of those have a word like healthy or
Or
good
natural.
or
Natural is another good
natural
one.
or something that's on it that's trying to make you believe that this is going to help you?
Tell me about your dietary path. I know I've been on quite a search in that regard, and I love hearing what other people have done.
It's an interesting one. I have had times, I certainly am the type that will enjoy a beer. I'm a type that will enjoy a wine. Well, part of my path, I went for about almost 2 years with no alcohol whatsoever. And I don't doubt for a second that it helped a bit. What happens when you do that is almost invariably you also change your diet to eat a little bit healthier diet. And so things will improve. Almost by definition, things will improve. And I think what's hard for patients is we can have this utopian dream that if I have a perfect diet, I can get back to the health that I had in the past. And then you'll read stories, and some have. Some have been able to, whether they go full vegan or whether they go other type of diet. I don't recommend one type versus another. I do tend to talk about real food. Just eat real food is kind of the closest to the diet I would recommend. But when you don't get perfect, it's hard to try to be perfect all the time when you don't get a perfect outcome. So I think we all, I should never say all, I think we have a habit of slipping back into maybe enjoying a glass of wine or maybe enjoying some snacks that you didn't really look at the labels very carefully. You don't really understand what you eat. So it's certainly a big part of the journey, but it's also not the only part of the journey that I think is important.
What are some of the other parts that are important?
One of the people, I won't give a name out here, but one person once said, it's not just what you're eating, it's what's eating you. And I think we all know we can feel the impact that a certain type of stress can have on us. But there are so many different types of stress. Stress over eating a perfect diet is still stress. Stress at work, stress at home, stress, very many different types of stress are they have a big impact on how our body responds to us. And I think people know that, but we don't We have to pay attention to it, but we can't think that it's the be all to end all as far as the root of our problems as well. Uh,
No, I don't know that anything's a be all and end all, and that's what makes this so difficult. I think perfectionism is our enemy in many ways, and I'm very guilty of it myself. Um, I think it's incredibly difficult to find this balance that creates health because it's only a balance at a moment. Things will change. So you have to be constantly aware and weighing things and trying things. And yet, that's a quest for perfectionism.
Exactly, exactly. And you'll see people you almost hear in the back of your mind, you're looking at somebody and you can hear parent issues, parent issues, parent issues, and they're focused 100% on fixing their diet. It's like, well, maybe there's more to this. It's hard. Well, people will say, let's uncover the root cause. Let's figure out the root cause of what's going on in your situation. It's incredibly hard. It inevitably will never be one thing. And in that case I just gave, maybe the parent issues are the biggest issue. And if somebody's focusing on food, then they're actually creating more issues in other ways. But it's very, very individualized. A lot of us talk about being on a healing journey or a journey to health. And it very much is a journey, and we may find things out about ourselves and what causes us impact from one day to the next. But not too many of us have found back to perfection. So it can be a lifelong journey.
Yeah, I think it's about putting the basic building blocks in place. I think nutrition's a building block, exercise is a building block, stress management is a big building block. And I also think staying socially connected is another one. We need connection. And often when we're ill, it's very hard to find that.
I'm glad you brought that one up, Pat. That's one of those things that, if you're in pain, you don't necessarily want to go out for a walk with somebody, or you don't really want to talk about it, or you don't really want to ask for help. And it's not that hard to fall into a situation of wanting to take yourself out of the game and out not connecting with people. And yet, when you find you're most alive is when you really are having conversations, and you almost forget about what's going on in your life because you just feel so invigorated by being with other people. And especially, I've connected with an awful lot of people, either patients or doctors or other types of practitioners, that are on a journey to improving health outcomes for many. We don't want others to have to go through what we're going through, so we do our best to offer tidbits or even sometimes just be an ear. And those social connections are truly, they're so incredibly valuable. And it's hard to put a value on them, but I think they're very, very important.
I think they are too. And I think that they are the first casualty when it comes to a sudden illness or even a gradual illness. People simply don't know what to do or say. They move on with their lives, and your lives may no longer intersect. And you have to create an entirely new tribe of people. And you don't want to be mired in a tribe of illness. You're looking for a more soulful connection. It's very difficult.
I really hope people are listening to what you just said, because it is the tribe. You are looking for a tribe, but I don't need to go to a tribe of people that are saying RA sucks.
Yeah.
I know that. I know it. But I want my tribe to be the ones that are saying, well, you know what? I played basketball the other day, or I did this, and we inspire each other and we encourage each other to move on. And it's not that hard to find your tribe once you put yourself out there.
Oh, I don't know. I might argue with that a little bit because I think that you can meet people and join groups, but I think as you go through illness, which causes you to reflect upon yourself, that you're starting to look for more soulful connections, and those are a little bit rarer.
Fair comment, and I do agree with that. And I guess I'm not even trying to be wishy-washy with you. The point is, the more I actually very much accept what you said. And what, for me personally, I have always put myself out there. And I've been criticized for that. I've been roundly accepted for that. And I did share something on social media the other day, and it was finding your tribe. If you just keep speaking your truth, the ones that keep coming back, that's your tribe. But you're right.
Oh, no, I like
It
that.
has
I think
taken me a
that's really
long time.
good. No, I think that's really good, and I think that's really true because it goes towards expressing your authentic self, which is sometimes very out of tune with what society wants.
And we often want to be silent. Society doesn't some of society doesn't want to hear us, and we want to be silent, but we're not. I love the Horton Hears a Who story. The only way that the Whoville folks were finally heard is when Cindy Lou Who found her voice, and we need the voices of all of us.
I think so too. I want to go back to these building blocks because I think that they're really important. And I want to bring up stress management. I think that's something that we in our society totally overlook. I wish it were something we started discussing when kids are young in school, teaching them whether it's a sport or yoga or meditation, whatever it is that allows them to be still. I think we need to start integrating that into how we live.
100%. And the thing is, so, and you mentioned meditation in general, like sports. If we do have a sport that we really enjoy, or a craft, or something like that, then when we're in the moment of doing that sport or doing that craft, there's an awful lot of stuff that goes away, and you're able to find yourself. You're able to be at peace. The meditation thing, it's, what, I've done quite a bit of meditation over the years, and it can be very scary because the first thing you do when you start to meditate is your thoughts come into your head when you're trying to be silent, and you say, I'm not very good at it. Well, meditation isn't about being perfect. It isn't about being very good at it. Just simply focusing on your breath, coming up with ways of dealing with your breath that just simply get you in the present moment. And I do have a very spiritual side, and some of the best teachings, you'll hear about a musician that says, oh, that was just downloaded to me. I got that. I wrote that song in 3 minutes. I don't even know where the words come. And they were at peace. They were totally at peace. And to me, meditation has that ability, and I work at it. It can be hard sometimes, but it's also something you can do. I love that you should meditate for 10 minutes a day. And if you don't have time to do that, then you should go for an hour.
I love that saying. Actually, for me, I've found that meditation as a practice allows me to build skills inadvertently almost. And those skills are learning to watch my mind, pay attention to what it's saying, which is usually nothing very good, and to bring that stillness that I can find in meditation to my daily life. And I've been meditating for over a decade. This doesn't happen overnight, but I think it's a profound impact on everything you do.
Absolutely. I strongly agree with that. And almost anybody that talks about being on any form of a healing journey, or even a journey within, a journey to find themselves. Why are you here? What's your purpose? Almost everybody talks about what they've learned along the way by being able to get in the moment, by able to find peace. And they often refer to meditation.
It's so interesting. I find often when we hit a bump in the road, like disease particularly, it really sends us off on a tangent to look within.
Absolutely. And we didn't do it before. We had no
No,
reason to. It was just moving along. And then that's what we thought it was.
it was
So
shallow and wonderful.
exactly. And it forces us to look within. And you know what? I love the turning over pebbles analogy. The pebbles are all inside you. You never know what you're going to find. And you never know when you're going to find the biggest thing of all. You just have to keep turning them over.
That's a really good one. I like that a lot. I want to talk a little bit about our current medical system and approaching disease. And what are some of the roadblocks we're facing? Because I think so many of us hit these roadblocks in terms of trying to deal with health issues. What can we do?
Well, the biggest roadblock to me, and I'm pretty confident on this one, the biggest roadblock to me is confusion. So everybody's trying to help. The doctors are doing their best to help within the medical system, especially if you're talking chronic disease, or which I'm more knowledgeable on, or even mental illness. They've got training. They have been taught how to do things. They don't have unlimited time to spend with you. They do their best to come up with a diagnosis. They might tell you to go and work on your diet and work on your stress and work on your exercise and work on your alcohol intake and work on your meditation, but they're not really there to coach you. So you've picked up something, and that's great. And then you might go and find some other integrative medicine practitioner that helps you in a way. And then you'll hear people saying, "Oh, that stuff, that's woo woo," or "that's this," or and it's there's somebody trying to discredit the things that are working for you. And so you go into a state of confusion. You can even start to doubt yourself. It's like, well, wait a minute. I have had a lot of success with that, as have others. Why am I hearing all this noise? And it's that confusion and that polarization that comes out as a result of that, and the separation. I consistently say that the polarization and the separation are manufactured. It's, and I don't mean conspiracy theory concept, but it's like there are bad experiences with conventional practitioners. There are bad experiences with integrative practitioners. And if we spend all of our time focusing on the things that have worked badly and have harmed people, then that's where we're going to stay. But if we spend our time saying, what are the things that are helping people? What is the good of all of these things? And acknowledge that they don't work for everybody, but they do work for some. And we support each other, and we come back together. It's not really normal to be so polarized. And even in the today's state, we've got masking, and you still see people having debates, scientists talking about debates about, how effective are masks. But you have people out in the public yelling at each other because they're wearing a mask or because they're not. And as a patient, it's like it's easy to go silent, and you almost stop having conversations because you don't want to be in the midst of one of these battles. So to me, any recommendations at all is find the people that are having respectful engagement, respectful conversation, and go there and stay in those circles, because there's a lot to learn.
And I would also say, just you are saying this, be open-minded. I've become much more woo over the years, certainly. And one of the things I found enormous success with has been acupuncture. And I realize it doesn't work for everybody, but I have had just story after story of success with this. I find it hard to consider that woo, given the fact that it's been around thousands of years.
And people will even go down that path, but it's also the success. And there's the one of the ones that always tends to get to me is people say follow the science, but I agree with that. Science is a very, very, very big tool in our toolbox, and you can find science to support anything that you want to support. Your confirmation bias will take you to find the things that support it. And there's lots of science. And every time I see a debate on Twitter talking about acupuncture and whether there's science or not, there's lots of science. And there's lots of science saying it doesn't work. And it's like, you know what? So what's the point? The point is we're not going to resolve it by having a scientific debate. So why don't we figure it out? And again, like you said, it works for some, it doesn't work for others. If that's what gets you into relaxation mode and lets your body kind of calm itself down, not be on fight or flight mode for a little while, it certainly can't hurt.
Well, I think part of the problem, this goes to the issue of polarization, is that we have different languages for these different pursuits. The language in medicine is technical, not very human, as are the tests and everything else that go with it. The language that goes along with some of the more woo concepts, let's just use acupuncture as an example, is not linear. It is ancient, it is softer, it requires a different level of perception to follow the rationale.
Exactly. And I have shared an energy healing story. I can't explain it. It's the weirdest thing that ever happened in my life. I know something happened,
What happened?
and feel free. Somebody told me I should see a Reiki master. It's like, okay, that doesn't necessarily resonate. I went, and I was in a room, a clinic type session. I'd had tailbone pain for probably 3 or 4 years. I couldn't do sit-ups at the gym. I had to do them on an exercise ball because my tailbone pain was chronically quite, probably a level 6 or 7 on a pain perspective when I touched it through sit-ups. And I went to this session. I found out this person called themselves a vibrational energy healer. And it's like, okay, that kind of sounds crazy. I was with that session for a half an hour. I've not had the tailbone pain since. So let me ask you a question. Did I just tell you that energy healing was for everybody? Did I just tell you that energy healing was scientifically supported? Did I just tell you that energy healing should be part of standard protocol? Of course I didn't. But I also cannot believe that this is just total nonsense.
Well, I think the anecdotal stories we tell are incredibly valuable. And if you have an open mind, those anecdotes may lead to new information or certainly new understanding.
So I love how you're saying open mind. I open my ears, I open my eyes, I open my heart, and I open my mind. And I try to close my mouth sometimes. Being open things come in so many different ways if we take the time to pay attention.
And maybe to be non judgmental.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Easier said than done sometimes, but I think if you can suspend judgment, you may pick up some very good pieces of information that benefit you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, are we going to have a patient revolution in medical care?
I think we already do. I think there are a number of people. There's groups all over the place that are doctors coming together, doctors saying that the system is broken, doctors saying they're burnt out and there's got to be a better way. And I'm seeing a lot of groups of doctors getting together. The consistent message that I'll say my tribe, and no doctor has ever argued with us, by the way, doctors are going to try to create something that's much better until such time as we get patients demanding, I use that word in quotes, demanding what is being offered, then it's going to be a struggle. But as soon as healthcare has become very much a diagnose and treat model, and so I'll get hammered for saying it that way, but it very much is a diagnose and treat model. Once we have healthcare to a preventative, we focus on health, we focus on care, we focus on prevention, we focus on recovery in a much bigger way, in a much more holistic, there's another word that sets some folks off. But once we are able to do that and the patients say, I really want that. I don't want to be seen for 6 minutes and then send me for blood work and then tell me what I have and tell me what I'm going to be on for the rest of my life. To me, it is only a patient revolution, working extremely tightly with the doctors and the physicians who are already on the path of making this a much better system for all. We've got over 60% of the population. I think that's U.S. statistics. I think Canadian statistics are not much different. Diagnosed with chronic disease, which includes obesity. What if we could get that number to 10%? We can do that. And it's, as I said, it's already happening. You just find the people that are working on that. They're more and more finding each other every day. And we are well down that path of creating a patient revolution to reduce the prevalence of chronic disease and mental illness.
I think medicine is fracturing for a lot of the points you brought up. I think part of it is medical burnout is very real. I think the doctors themselves need to find a more holistic way to approach things. And for those who went into medicine to heal, the current system, which is really procedure and payment linked, isn't about healing. And I think we need to change that relationship. And yet, that's very hard to do. It's very complicated. People have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
Yeah.
Getting out of school, how do they pay for that? And that lends itself to this transactional system where 6 minutes, quick, tell me what's wrong with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so much. The burnout is very real. A lot of the burnout is because doctors aren't allowed to be doctors. Some doctors probably got in this for prestige. Some doctors probably got in this because they thought there was going to be a lot of money. A lot of doctors got into this because they thought they were going to be able to help patients. The more we can get the system back to focusing on helping patients and removing the roadblocks to doing so, then the closer we get to the goals. And look at the current situation with the pandemic. It seems pretty common acceptance that the people most impacted are those with underlying conditions. Well, what if we spent as much time and effort and money at getting underlying conditions to be far less prevalent?
You
That's
know,
the revolution.
well, I think part of the revolution too is finding emotional connection on some level with your healthcare provider. And I think that's very difficult to do because they live in a linear world where they have been taught that this is the way things are, this is the way things get done. And that doesn't lend itself to emotional connection at all.
And you're bang on. That is why doctors are getting together. That is why there's lifestyle medicine groups that are trying to get more and more certified MDs. We're not talking about people who are using the phrase integrative medicine to try to sell you some stuff. We're talking about doctors that are saying, by focusing on lifestyle medicine, we have had so much more success with our patients. By focusing with integrative, we've had more success. By being more direct primary care and having more time with our patients, we are being far more successful. We are being doctors again. We are helping patients again. And that very much is happening. And it's hard in a system where 70% of the doctors are employed. And it's hard to get out because you are employed and you've got the handcuffs, and are you sure you'll be able to make it on your own if you step outside of the system? But there's quite a few folks that are helping doctors figure out how to handle that as well. And I just think you're going to see a lot more uptake in that area.
I hope so. I think that also goes back to the educational issue, and that is doctors are educated to be part of a system. They're not educated to be at all entrepreneurial, and they don't have the skills or perspective to do that in many cases. But I think that entrepreneurial spirit is what we need to reform our healthcare system.
Yes, the spirit and the education to go with it. They need to know how, they need to know that it can work. And I'm working with a couple of groups that is their entire focus. They use the phrase, the art of medicine has been stolen by the business of healthcare, and it's time to steal it back. But gracefully, they've said, theft is not a good thing. Let's work on education and let's work on bringing it back. But let's focus on the positives of what we're accomplishing rather than any of the potential negative terminology that goes with it.
But I like the art of medicine. That really describes medicine at its best.
What does a doctor do? A doctor practices. It's not a coincidence that word is used. They do their best. And I have so much support for almost every doctor out there, for almost every lifestyle medicine practitioner, integrative medicine practitioner that is simply doing their best within the knowledge capacity that they have to work with patients to get better outcomes. But it's a practice. Nothing they do works for every single patient, and they have to do that practice every single time.
Yeah, and actually, I think that responsibility right now goes back to the patient. The patient has to be willing to be curious, to explore, to spend a lot of money doing it often, to
Yeah.
really decide to internalize that quest for health.
And it's funny. So I'm going to agree and add sort of a conversational piece to that. One of the biggest issues when you hear people criticizing integrative medicine or lifestyle medicine is how much money people pay and how there are charlatans and the likes they're just out for money and follow the money. And so you hear this critique. I think the point we have to work towards is educating the patient to look for more. Sometimes all of this can happen within the conventional system without them spending more money. But if a patient comes in and accepts that there's only 6 minutes and they don't ask any questions and they hand all of their power over to the doctor, then they leave with a prescription and they don't have the literacy to look deeper. So I think our efforts are, how do we improve that literacy, not only for the patient, but for the practitioners themselves, to say, there is more, and here are some of the places that you can look, and encouraging people to be more open-minded and to investigate more.
That sounds like an ideal world.
Utopia, isn't it?
So, one of the things that I see happening, particularly in uh, in these times, is I think more and more doctors are looking to spin out into a situation where they have more control and more options. And concierge medicine certainly is representative of that. Have you had much interface with concierge practices?
Simple answer is no. I think that's more of a US based than I am in Canada.
Hmm.
I certainly have seen conversations in that path, but I certainly, whether it's concierge or, I mean, I keep using terms like integrative and lifestyle and even functional. Some of these resonate with me more than others. But the point is, it often is certified MDs, practicing doctors that are branching out because they know they are not servicing their patients as well as they would like to. To me, that's the message to focus on. And in concierge, even direct primary care, I hear a lot of colleagues talking about that, how they're able to get to know their patients a lot better. They're servicing their patients a lot better. So all of these, I think, are positive signs. So I didn't really answer your question on concierge. I don't have as much on that in particular.
Yeah, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Have you seen that Greg Braden video in China where the three doctors use energy to dissolve a tumor?
I do. I saw that. I forget when I first saw that. Part of my, it's interesting. You're hitting on, I mentioned that I was diagnosed in 2008, and I spent about 3 years inside the system, believing everything I was told, and believing there was nothing more to look at. And then I was introduced to some folks, and that video in particular was brought up, and it's truly amazing. I mean, I don't have any reason to believe that it didn't happen. And it's there is I think is a hospital. I assume it's still around, but I don't know that. And that video was really, really, maybe not life changing for me, but it certainly was mind opening for me.
I thought that video was stunning, and it opens up all sorts of questions that we don't address in our Western medical model. And to me, that just invites investigation and curiosity.
Yes. Wait, curiosity is missing. The get people in, get the diagnosis done quickly, get the treatment done quickly, get, even though it's for the rest of their life and we haven't really necessarily helped them figure out how to get off of the treatment or how to minimize the treatment. That curiosity is very much missing.
That rest of your life, the rest of your life part when it comes to medication, I have real issues with that. One of the drugs that was part of my chemo mix, Rituxan, was my drug from hell. Most people do really well with it. I just did not. And it was potentially a drug that I might be on for maintenance for a very long time. And to give you an idea, I had head to toe hives. I couldn't breathe. My chest just closed down. I mean, potentially life threatening, side effects from this. And the doctors had said, well, we'll put you on steroids. Well, I didn't think long term steroids sounded like a hot idea. That's when I did about a month of intensive acupuncture. And I probably didn't need to do a full month, but I never again had any side effects after that acupuncture. And that is anecdotal. I don't know that I can't scientifically prove anything, but for me, that was just so profound that there are other options out there if you're willing to go look.
Let's talk about the anecdotal. The challenge I have with the anecdotal is that if yours is the only story, Pat, that's ever happened, then that's how people treat anecdotal evidence. They treat it like this doesn't happen very often. And yet the stories of patients that have either had significantly fewer side effects or significantly improved health, or the anecdotes are absolutely voluminous. And it really should be an invitation for more curiosity and more support. Because in a lot of these cases, to tell somebody, okay, you're going to do your chemo, and we also recommend meditation, I didn't cost them anything. And there are a lot of very free options. And sure, there are others that cost money, but the point is we've shut so many of them down, or we've created so much polarization. And some, I shouldn't say we, because we aren't. We're the ones who are trying to make sure that doesn't keep existing. But there's so much curiosity and so much to learn from. Let's start focusing on learning, and let's stop focusing on pointing fingers and saying that it doesn't work and therefore it can't work for anybody. I hate that.
Well, I think health is much more multidimensional. It goes to spiritual health, it goes to mental health, it goes to all these other very hard to define quantities. And I think anecdotal evidence is incredibly valuable because it might point you down a path that is different.
Yeah.
Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. But to dismiss it dismisses all scientific curiosity.
Yeah. And part of the challenge, I do see this, I try very hard to pay attention to what are the criticisms, because there's no question they exist. There's no question that there's challenges here. I think almost every patient has had somebody say to them, well, what are you eating? Or what's eating you? And if you look at that in a negative way, or if somebody else looks at it in a negative way, then they'll say, oh, you're blaming me because I'm not eating the proper diet, or you're blaming the patient because they're not eating the proper diet. Most of the people asking these questions are either asking it because they don't know what else to ask, and they know that a lot of people have had benefit, or they're trying to create conversation. And to turn that into a negative gets into a whole different set of challenges. And it's like, well, if that happens to be, oh, you've heard that 7 times now in the last week that you should look into your diet, and then you go and find somebody who truly understands diet, then guess what? You probably needed to hear it all 7 times. Do we hear it too much? Sometimes. But I can't waste any energy whatsoever thinking that that person is trying to blame me for how I eat, or blame me for not dealing with stress. It's
Rather than
doesn't
blame,
exist.
I think we can turn it into adventure. I mean, one of the things I've always said about food is take a food you're not familiar with. Maybe Swiss chard is an example for a lot of people. Cook it 2 or 3 ways 1 week. If you hate it, you never have to revisit it. But if you like it, include it. And the next week, do something different, or do it every other week, or whatever. Over time, what you're going to find is that you naturally shift your diet towards healthier things, because the more healthy things you eat, you start pushing out the bad stuff
Exactly. You're paying attention.
and
And
having fun.
you're having fun, and you've given yourself something to look forward to.
Very much. Very much. So, how would you, what advice would you give somebody starting a health journey of any sort?
That's a it's a very good one, and I'm going to give the advice that I really have given, and I hope it's controversial, Pat. I read 2 books. One was Dr. Lissa Rankin, Mind Over Medicine. And she is a doctor in the California area, and she's actually no longer practicing as a doctor, but it just made me pause and look at all of the components of my life that could possibly be contributing to my condition, and how that opened my mind and eyes and ears and so on to start to consider more. That was truly life changing. The other book I often tell people to consider is Radical Remission. Radical Remission does tend to focus on cancer. It's by Kelly Turner. She has an entire group, but she has kept track of stories of people that have radically changed their life, people that were supposed to be not with us anymore in a very short time, and they've radically changed their lives. And it's not one anecdote. It's hundreds of anecdotal stories of people who have radically changed their lives. So to me, the bad news could happen. I could be the one who's diagnosed with something and I really don't have any time to live. And maybe my story doesn't end up being a good one, but I can't live that way. And I don't think people want to live that way. So if I can offer any kind of hope by going to places like this, and it just opens your mind. And I remember the one fellow in radical remission, he woke up and found out that the birds start singing at X number of minutes before sunrise every day. And 30 some odd years later, he's telling that story. It's like, there's hope. And even if not all stories are going to turn out with massive success, but I'd rather live with hope than without.
One of the things I love about Kelly Turner's book is rather than the traditional medical approach of what's wrong with you, she took the approach of asking what's right.
Amazing. That's think about that. Think about what if your mind is focused on the positives. Yeah, that's great.
Well, it's a wonderful perspective, and one that is 180 degrees away from the way we normally look at things. And I think that, again, going back to anecdotal information, you start coming up with all these anecdotes out of the people she's interviewed. Who's not to say that that isn't leading to an answer that's on the positive side?
Exactly. It's maybe if we spent a little bit more time on those and learning from the anecdotes, the answers are probably right in front of our eyes. We probably know what's causing a lot of conditions. 80% of conditions are preventable. Those are numbers I've seen quoted. We know a lot of ways to recover. There's a lot of stories of recovery. What if we spent our focuses there?
You've become a very vocal advocate in the healthcare community. If you could rewrite your story and not have gone off on this tangent, thanks to, an autoimmune condition, would you?
No. And I don't want anybody to say, oh, he's he's grateful that he got this condition. Some say that. Some are grateful that it helped them wake up. I'm not saying that. But I'll tell you what I've learned. There's Joseph Campbell writes about the hero's journey. And it sounds like ego sometimes when you describe yourself as being in a hero's journey, but the hero's journey is you go on a journey and you figure things out. The journey's not complete until you bring it back. And I think that I'm in the process of bringing it back. And that part of my life, I wouldn't change in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. You can subscribe to our free podcast at www.bumpintheroad.us or become a premium member to hear the full conversation. Just go to www.bumpintheroad.us for more information and to sign up.